Hello. Could I speak to Mr. John Girdlestone, please?
Speaking.
Oh, hi. My name is Julie Bloom. I'm studying here in the UK for a year, and a friend told me you organize an international club where people of different nationalities can meet up.
That's right. The club was founded over 50 years ago, and at present we've got members from approximately 30 countries. What's the name of your friend?
Louise. She's back in the States now.
Oh, Louise. I remember her. So, are you from the States too, Julie?
Yes, from California.
Great. Well, let's see what I can tell you about the club. It doesn't cost a lot to become a member. You can join for 2 months for £2.50, or it's £8.50 for 12 months.
And is it only for university students?
No, we're open to anyone. We have quite a few members from the language schools in town, and also local people who are interested in meeting people from other countries.
Okay. So what sorts of things do you do?
Well, one thing we organise on a regular basis is dancing. That's a great way to get to know people.
Do you mean like disco?
No, we don't do disco. We do folk dances. Some from Europe, but some from further afield. Everyone really enjoys them. We meet on Monday evenings at 8:30. Do you know the University Centre?
Yes, I think so.
We meet there in the main hall. Don't get confused with the old hall, where there's a ballroom dancing group. They're nothing to do with us.
And can I just show up?
Sure, everyone's welcome.
And do I need to come along with a partner for the dancing?
You don't have to, though you can if you want to. I'm sure you'll have a good time. We have live music for some sessions. I don't suppose you play a musical instrument, do you?
I play the violin, but I'm not very good.
Well, we're looking for some people to join the band. If you're interested, why don't you call Mike? His number's 01356 890674.
Okay, thanks.
Then we also have a meal together regularly. That's once a month, and it's always on a Sunday, the second one of the month.
Oh, so that'll be this coming Sunday. And where's that held?
In the University Centre again, in the canteen. We used to have it in the restaurant on the ground floor, but that's closed at weekends now, unfortunately, so we're up on the top floor. They do very reasonably priced meals, things like baked potatoes and pizza.
And can I just show up there?
Absolutely.
Your English.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10.
Your English.
Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Your English.
Then we have some special summer events too. On July the 2nd, we're going to a place called Great Hampton, about half an hour's drive away, to take part in the carnival they hold there every year. It's always a good day out, especially if it's a sunny day.
Oh, Louise said she went on that last year. She said it was really good. And it'd be nice to go somewhere out of town.
Well, in that case, you might be interested in our event on July the 16th. That's a walk in the Stannard Hills. We do about 15 kilometres, so it's a decent walk, and it's for charity.
Sounds a pretty long way.
Then, on August the 7th, we're having a garden party at the home of one of our organisers. She has an outdoor pool, so if the weather's warm enough, you'll be able to go swimming.
Okay. Hard to imagine that today.
Well, the summer hasn't really started yet. Then our last summer event's on September the 4th. Last year we went to a castle, but this year we're going to the theatre. We do ask members to let us know in advance for that, so we can book.
Sure. Well, I'd definitely like to join.
Your English.
Section 2. You will hear a man taking a group of tourists around a museum site. First, You have some time to look at questions 11 to 14.
Pause the recording for 30 seconds.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 14.
Welcome to Brampton Museum. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the museum first and then show you round. As you can see, Brampton is an open-air museum. The first open-air museums were established in Scandinavia towards the end of the 19th century, and the concept soon spread throughout Europe and North America, and there are several in Britain, all of which tell the history of a particular part of the country. Brampton focuses on life during the 19th century. The site was chosen because there were already some historic 19th century buildings here, and others have been dismantled in different parts of the region and rebuilt on the site. This hadn't been attempted before in these parts, so we're very proud of what we have here. All of the buildings are filled with furniture, machinery and objects. You may be able to see these in other museums, but not in their original settings. What also sets Brampton apart from other museums is that the story of the exhibits is told not by labels, but by costumed staff like myself. I look after sheep, cows and hens, which are much the same as those you see on modern farms, but I use traditional methods to care for them. You will also be able to see a blacksmith and a printer, as well as other craftspeople. If you talk to them, you'll be able to find out what life was really like 150 years ago. Our programme of activities during the year has guided walks, an agricultural fair, and all the other events you would expect a museum to have. But remember, here you experience them in the real surroundings. The site is divided into different areas. The main building contains our High Street, which is a street of 19th century shops, offices and some homes. There's a stationer's shop which sells a range of specially selected cards, prints and copies of Victorian stationery, all available for purchase by visitors. Upstairs, in the same building, a printer demonstrates the production of posters, business cards and advertising material. Across the street from the stationer's is a clothes shop, and there's a baker's where you can watch a demonstration of someone making bread, cakes and pastries. We also have a sweet shop, which has old-fashioned sweets for sale. Vintage trams travel along from one end of the street to the other, carrying visitors on their journey into the past. We will also be visiting the farm and taking a ride on a steam train. Of course, the main form of transport in those days was the horse, and you can watch horses being exercised in the old stables. This part of Britain was famous for coal mining, and on the site we have part of a mine which opened in 1860 and was worked for over 100 years before closing in 1963. Visitors can put on a hard hat and take a guided tour underground to see how coal was worked and to experience the working conditions in the early 1900s.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 15 to 20.
Pause the recording for 30 seconds.
Now listen and answer questions 15 to 20.
Now, if you'd like to look at your map, we'll begin our tour. The site is a bit like a circle, with the railway going round the edge. You can see where we are now by the entrance, and we're going to start by walking to the High Street. We'll go to the crossroads in the middle of the map and go straight on making our way between two buildings on either side of the path. The larger one is an exhibition centre, but it's not open today, unfortunately. The other building is offices. The path leads directly to the High Street building, which is at the opposite side of the site to the entrance. Here you're free to wander around and take a ride up and down on a tram. We'll then take the path which follows the railway line and crosses it to the farm. If you wish, you can have tea in the farmhouse, and there'll be time to look at the animals and the machinery. Then we cross the railway line again and visit our special attraction, which is the coal mine. It's just in front of us, here at the entrance. We'll return to the crossroads and walk through a small wooded area to the manor house. This is one of the original buildings on the site and belonged to a wealthy farmer. You can look round the house and gardens and talk to our guides who can tell you what it was like to live there. We will then follow a path which goes past the pond and will take us to the railway station, which is situated between the path and the railway line. Finally, we'll take the steam train back around the site, passing alongside the High Street and the coal mine back to the entrance. So, if you'd like to follow me...
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 3. You will hear Jim and Jane, 2 students, talking about their professor's lecture. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Jane, what did you think of Professor Morgan's lecture? I don't know about you, but I find it incredibly difficult to believe that light influences the environment as much as he says. I've never seen any journal articles, websites or anything that verifies his arguments. It's stupid.
On the contrary, I've seen a great deal of research supporting his argument from a wide range of renowned scientists. Have you looked at the recommended textbook listed on the course outline given to us at the beginning of the semester? All the information is in there. Perhaps you've just been looking in the wrong places.
I never look at the course outlines. I have so many loose sheets of paper I tend to lose anything I'm given by the end of the day. What's the textbook they recommend? And where can I get it from? I should probably go buy it soon. I'm already behind in the course.
Yeah, you definitely should buy it. And our grades are more important this year. It's called The Influence of Light on the Environment. You should be able to find it in the bookshop on campus. If not, they'll order it within 2 weeks. In the meantime, you should read up on Ken Simpson's work. He argues that in order to protect natural habitats, governments should endeavour to turn off lights in cities at night.
Well, that's controversial. I doubt any government would be willing to do that any time soon. I imagine roads would become quite dangerous without street lighting. For this issue, Dave Kepler suggests they could just replace the existing lights with more environmentally friendly bulbs. They could even install solar-powered lights. That way, roads will be more eco-friendly while maintaining safety. Although I guess they wouldn't be particularly effective in colder countries, especially during the winter.
That's quite a good idea, actually. The price of solar power is supposed to be on par with electricity within the next few decades. and it was on the news this morning. I've also heard that, according to Sharon Gray, in countries with more sunlight, insect-eating animals tend to be smaller in size. Since there are fewer insects, and the remaining insects produced a smaller number of eggs.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that sunlight also has a negative effect on the quality of water, but I'm not sure I believe it. In many hot countries, particularly developing countries, there is a lot of water pollution caused by factories rather than sunlight. Nevertheless, Maria Jackson says that in direct sunlight, the surface of the water becomes more translucent. Therefore, it affects the amount of sunlight that aquatic insects can absorb. Not much research has been undertaken to prove Jackson's theory, but it seems to have been widely accepted anyway.
I've never heard of that. I'll have to look it up on Google. The only other theory I've studied is Barbara Swallow's study on how declined insect population adversely affects the frog population. Not that I'm complaining. I hate insects, especially spiders.
You have arachnophobia? I never would have guessed. Didn't your brother have a pet black widow spider?
Yes, he did, and I hated it. It escaped from its cage once, and we never found it. I had nightmares for months.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Okay, now I'm getting goosebumps. Let's change the subject. What's your stance on natural and artificial light?
Honestly, I'm not sure it makes much difference which one you use. Species will die out either way. I think the real argument we should consider is global warming and protection or replacement of finite fuels. Solar power provides us with an incredible opportunity to replace electricity, and governments should definitely increase spending on research in this field. The theories discussed in our lectures, like Simpson's and Gray's, are so vague and lack proof, so I don't understand why we even study them.
I see what you mean. I don't like learning unsupported theories for exams, and I'd rather spend my time learning something else. For example, I'd be much more interested in studying the animals in safari parks than researching migratory birds, particularly the effect of tourists on the quality of life of animals. As we know, every year thousands of visitors will drive in their own vehicles or ride in vehicles provided by the facility to observe freely roaming animals.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. Especially those animals living in more tropical countries like Borneo. Following on from that, I want to study how bringing animals over from foreign countries to put in our zoos affects their life expectancy. For example, do you remember when China sent pandas to Edinburgh Zoo? Apparently, one of the pandas became depressed, but it was never explained why. To me, obviously, you can't take an animal out of its natural habitat and put it in a cage on the other side of the world. It just doesn't work.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Now turn to section 4.
Part 4. You will hear part of a lecture for history students about a relic in Turin, a town in southern France. First, You have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
OK, in this lecture we are going to learn the history of Turin, which is a county in southern part of France. We will also be looking at some archaeological findings as they are the basis of what we know today. The history of this area can date back to 2,500 years ago. In the earliest years there were just small settlements where people lived a very simple life. Slowly, the place grew into a town and became livelier, and business activities began to emerge. According to Peter Rocher, a French archaeologist, this place was an important agricultural county since a long time ago. In his findings, there were buried pieces of grain and broken utensils, which were the evidence of ancient Romans who traded their pottery for grains with people in Turin. This also proves that the business activities were quite active in this area back then. However, it is something else that gave us a much better idea of what life was like in Turin about 2,000 years ago. In the 1500s, a Frenchman found what seemed to be the remains of a castle when he was digging a well. There were bricks and stones that looked like part of a building. In the 17th century, a group of British archaeologists came to Turin to study the relics. Later, Swedish government also sent a team of archaeologists. The two teams did a thorough survey of the whole area together. It was hard work, which took them several months to dig out the ruins of old buildings and recover the area to what it originally looked like. The outcome of their work was surprising for all of them. It was a very big area of buildings and facilities for different purposes, which was a very good proof that a civilization existed from so long ago. In the northeastern part of the area, archaeologists found signs of a local market. There were stone stands that sellers used to place their commodities, and they even found silver coins, which were the currency back then. It further proved that the business was flourishing in ancient Turin. About 1 mile to the east, in the eastern part of that region, archaeologists found the remains of a building. From the words on a stone, they knew the building was called Cast. It looked like an old workshop, and archaeologists found tools for making textiles. It was a very important evidence that this industry was established about more than 2,000 years ago, which was situated in the central area, was a big round building, where there was something like a fountain. The team found buckets near it. This showed that it had been the place where people collected water. We could imagine the scene that dozens of people were standing by this fountain with buckets in their hands. What surprised the archaeologists most was that there was an ancient theatre in the northeastern part. There was a stage and several stone seats uncovered. Right next to the theatre, archaeologists unearthed a long stone. Then more stones were found, and they extended across a deeper area. From this, we could conclude that these stones were from an old bridge on the river. Architects were very skilled back then. They used their wisdom to conquer technical obstacles. But people used their wisdom much more than Millie for practical purposes. In the southwestern area, what seemed to be like a garden was uncovered. There were pots and wooden basins. It must have been a very beautiful place, full of plants and flowers of different colours. More importantly, there were 2 statues of lions just beside the gate. It means French people admired the power of this beast at that time, so that they used stones to make these statues. Not far from Dolby House, also in the central area, there was an elevated area, but its lower area in the centre. Through a lot of careful research, archaeologists came to the conclusion that this was a Roman bath. It's where rich people went to enjoy a comfortable and relaxing hot bath. Next to the bath, there was a sculpture of a woman who was like pouring water into the bath. Across from it, on the other side of the bath pool, people can see the sculpture of the Roman emperor who ruled this area for many years. These discoveries are good material for us to study the history of Turin and southern France. What we're going to do now is...
That is the end of part 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.